Hey, welcome to the She's Gone Free podcast. I'm Heidi Hope, and I am just starting the podcast back up again after some big life changes and a move over 1,000 miles south from what my hometown was. So if you're a new listener to this podcast, I am an artist and a photographer. I actually started my career as an art teacher, high school art teacher, and in my first year teaching, I had to teach photography, so that's how I got into photography. And then my husband and I owned a very successful portrait studio in Rhode Island for over a decade. And just last year, we had moved a lot of our business online and we made the move to St. Augustine, Florida. So that's where we live now. And obviously, there's a lot of changes and adjustments and getting settled in, but we do feel settled and at home here. We have 3 kids. My oldest is 14. She's a freshman in high school. A daughter who is in 5th grade, about to go to middle school next year, and a son in 1st grade. So we are new to this area, new to this neighborhood. We had really we knew a few people before moving here. I had a photographer friend who was in our industry that I had met at conferences over the years, and I knew she was in Northeast Florida. So she kind of pointed us to some people in the area when I started researching the schools and the neighborhoods and all that stuff. And that was pretty much our only contact here. We were moving in blind. We do have family in other parts of Florida, but we didn't have anybody in this area. So it's funny because people will ask what I do or what we do, and it's really hard to sum it up in a couple of sentences because we've started a lot of different businesses. And so I thought today's episode, I would just kind of give my origin story in business. Many of you know me as a coach or as a photographer. I used to teach and speak a lot in the photography industry, so that might be how you found me and my work. But I wanted to start from the beginning and just share how we started our first business and some of the challenges that I faced in starting other businesses, other revenue streams outside of just our portrait studio. How we were able to scale, how we started online businesses, and grew those just as a little bit of inspiration for you. And also to let you know that if you're going through some of the challenges in business that are inevitable, that we all face from time to time, that you are not alone. Being an entrepreneur of any kind, starting a business really brings you face to face with your greatest fears. You have to put yourself out there. You have to sell. You have to market. You have to do tasks within the business that maybe you're not really good at, like accounting or bookkeeping, or for me, answering emails. I'm really terrible about that. So when you're pushed up against those things, you're stretched. Being a business owner stretches you. And when you're stretched, you get uncomfortable and all of your fears come up. And so that's a part of the process that I coach women through. If you're interested in my coaching program, it's called She's Gone Free, same as the name of the podcast. And I really coach women now through these big shifts in life, like whether it is a change in their career identity or starting a new business, launching a creative project. Maybe it's from having transitioned from working full-time to working part-time or being home all the time. That happened a lot with the pandemic. Major life changes that when they stretch us, right? They stretch us into something new. These fears come up. And so it's just awesome to have a community of other women going through the same stuff who can hold your hand through it. That's what the She's Gone Free membership is about. You can learn more about joining us at HeidiHope.com/She's Gone Free, or go to HeidiHope.com and click on She's Gone Free. The links in my bios all have the She's Gone Free membership in there too. Welcome to the She's Gone Free podcast, a show where I share my story as a creative entrepreneur and mother, my journey to a full heart, my often messy ADHD brain, and the stories, hearts, and minds of other incredible women who have healed, found joy, and stepped into their greatness. If you like today's episode, subscribe to the channel and share it to inspire somebody else today. You can rate and review the podcast so it reaches more ears. And of course, I always love your comments. Follow me on your favorite social media platform at Heidi Hope, Photographer Rising, and She's Gone Free, or visit HeidiHope.com to get on my insider list and hear about upcoming coaching and online learning opportunities. Thanks for listening. I'm so grateful for you. Okay, so let's talk about how this all started. I was a high school art and photography teacher, and my first year teaching, I was in for maternity leave, and I had to learn, I was teaching like photography, cooking, digital photography, Photoshop, video production, and I knew none of those things. So I had to learn them, so I was just like trying to stay one step ahead of the students. In fact, Photoshop, I bought a textbook like this big off of Amazon, really thick. If you're listening on the podcast and you're not seeing the video on YouTube, it was probably 4 inches thick. And I just went page by page, like every night I would develop a lesson plan for each of the however many classes I was teaching at the time. And I was just trying to keep one step ahead of the students. But it turns out all of those skills really came in handy later when I started a photography business. And at first I was just doing it on the side. This was before Sean and I were even married. And I would do some family portraits on the side in addition to being a teacher full-time. And then in 2008, we had my daughter Juliana, and I took a maternity leave from teaching, but also I wanted to go back to school. I was already in the process of getting my master's in education, but I wanted to do my own art a little bit. Like I was thinking about maybe going into graphic design. I was taking some classes at Rhode Island School of Design. So I was just dabbling in like, what are some careers where I can still make money as an artist, but do more actual art? When I brought Juliana home from the hospital, when she was about 6 weeks old, I took my digital camera. It was just a Canon Digital Rebel, and it had a kit lens and a macro filter. There's a macro filter, which is like a macro filter just magnifies whatever you're photographing. So I put the macro filter on and I did like all the little detail, like her toes and her fingers. And oh my gosh, I spent hours like nursing her so she would fall asleep. And I just put a sheet on a coffee table. I'll have to find the background. I have a behind the scenes picture of this setup, my first newborn session. That was in our condo in Worcester, Massachusetts. And I had like red walls. It was terrible lighting, but I just like lost myself in photographing her. And I feel like I found myself in photographing her too. It was just it was the first time ever in my life that I so entered flow state. Now I study peak performance and I coach peak performers, and tapping into flow state is a really, powerful way to reach peak performance and to get into your genius zone and all that good stuff. But back then, I didn't even know what was happening. I just knew time seemed to stand still. I fell in love with baby photography in that shoot. And so I was on Flickr at the time. I don't know if any of you remember Flickr. It's a photo website for photo sharing, and it was really big among professional photographers back then. Well, I used to be on it because I would pull up examples for my students to show them examples of, composition, leading lines, or different lighting techniques. So I go to Flickr and I just type in newborn photography, and up pop these women who are doing it professionally. Now, this is back in 2008. And so the form of newborn photography that I ended up becoming known for in my area was very new. So the newborn posing style was all very new. Like people had heard of Ann Getty's, but like that's about it. There weren't a lot of people doing it in my area. And so I just learned, like I always loved babies, always been a baby person. And I loved photography, and I just observed what was trending online, and then I would learn the lighting patterns, and I was photographing in natural light. I set up my website, and after some practice with my own daughter, I decided to start offering photographs professionally. So I needed a professional level camera. My camera at the time was just an entry level digital SLR. That was the Canon Rebel, which is great to get started with. But I wanted a full frame camera, which is just higher quality, professional quality images. So I started looking around, and the entry level full frame camera at the time was, with the lens that I wanted, was around $3,000. So I borrowed money from my mom, because Sean and I were like just, we were young at the time, 26, like just getting started in our careers. He was working at Bank of America at the time as a branch manager, and I was on maternity leave unpaid. So we definitely did not have extra cash flow. So I borrowed the money from my mom to buy my first full frame camera to like get my business going. And I just thought, if I can just pay back this camera by the end of the year, then like I'll have made it. So I registered my business with the state. I got insurance. I set up my business bank accounts. I got my business debit card. I put that money into my business account. I bought my camera, and then I started photographing at a like portfolio building rate. And I can still remember like all those first babies. I had a couple friends who were pregnant, so I photographed their maternity shoots. I photographed their newborns, and then it just snowballed from there. As soon as I started sharing my work, it was so different from what everybody else was doing at the time that it took off really quickly. So before I knew it, I was like fully booked out, crazy busy, but I didn't have back then like any business systems in place. I was disorganized. My editing took me a really long time. I wasn't quick with editing yet. Just everything took really, really long. So, and I underestimated how much, you think like, oh, it's just an hour photography session, and okay, and I got to drive there a half hour each way and get a babysitter for the baby. But then it's like all the stuff on the back end that goes into running a business, I just had no idea. And I had nobody to learn from that was doing it at the time. There wasn't the level of online education that there is now. Like now you can take a course in how to start a photography business. In fact, I offer one. It's called Photographer Rising, if you ever want to join us there. And that is how to build and scale a 6 to 7 figure photography business. But that didn't exist. And like YouTube was just beginning. And so there was nobody telling you how to do it. It was really fly by the seat of your pants. And I did pay off the camera by the end of that year, and I went on to do as much in sales as what my teaching salary was. So back then, we'll call it $40,000. So this was big for me. I was like, okay, well, this could really be an actual career. This is working. And it continued to, my business just doubled and doubled and doubled month after month. I was also like running myself into the ground. So I would say maybe about a year into it, where the numbers were good, I was bringing in more than what my old salary and Sean's salary were combined. And so we thought about like, maybe he should come over and join me in the business. He can handle all the business stuff that I don't want to do. I always tell the story, like I walked up to him with a shoebox full of receipts and was like, can you help me with my taxes? So he was starting to manage a lot of that stuff within the business anyways. We saw the monetary potential there. We were hitting really good sales numbers. So he decided to give it a shot. So he came over, joined me in the business. And then from that point forward, there was no failing. This was it. This was our whole family income. Everything was riding on it. And so we hustled. Like we worked really, really hard, 50, 60 hours weeks. Juliana was in daycare. Thankfully, one of my high school friends had a great in-home daycare. And so she was in good hands, but it was a lot of working around the clock. And I can remember thinking, like, as Juliana got older, maybe she was around preschool age, and we really wanted to have more than one baby, but there was like a part of me that just thought, I can't even take a sick day. I can't imagine a maternity leave, or we just didn't have the business set up for me to stop working at all. Like if I wasn't shooting, there was no money coming in. And that led to a great degree of burnout, exhaustion, resentment for me of the business. Those were hard years. Those were really hard, exhausting years. So we began to really assess our business, not just in the sales numbers and the top line, because that was all good. We started to really look at the success of the business in a different or through a different lens. And that lens was, well, how can we build this so that we have the lifestyle that we want? How could we scale it or grow it from here? How do we make it sustainable? Because like the level of work that we were putting in just wasn't sustainable. That was it. I was having a lot of health issues. I had a reoccurring pinched nerve in my neck. That was frustrating. I was physically really exhausted. I was going to see all sorts of specialists, to chiropractors and doctors and therapists and like all the things. But at the end of the day, it just was not a sustainable level of work. It was this constant push. And I've learned now that really you need to balance that level of drive and push forward with rest. It's so, so important, especially for creatives and creative brains. Like that rest is just as important as the push in the overall success and energy of your business. But all these lessons didn't come till later. The first thing we did was we decided to hire an associate. So we brought on an associate while I was pregnant. That way she was able to shoot during my maternity leave. And we also had set up like more in insurances and in retirement and temporary disability insurance so that I was able to get paid while I was on maternity leave. But I only took 4 weeks off for that pregnancy. Definitely went back to work too soon. And still really didn't balance things out for many years to come. I was also starting to build my teaching and speaking career at that time. So I was doing all the studio stuff during the day and the editing and all that. And then, and we did actually hire a graphic designer. We hired an editor. So we did hire some support staff. But I was also the one marketing the business. And then I was trying to grow my consulting, my teaching and speaking career. So I was beginning to teach online and teach workshops, and then you have to market and sell those workshops. And then I was also traveling. I began traveling to speak at conferences. And this is all while Grace is a baby, and I'm a sleep deprived. I've got a newborn essentially at home. And so it was wild around, and that was all around 2012, 2013. One of the key turning points in my business was, and this is when I really kind of pulled together in my genius zone. I read The Big Leap, and that was just a book club book. In fact, I'm not sure if that podcast episode is up yet, but you can look for Book Club, The Big Leap, and you can hear our discussion about that book. That's an excellent book. In fact, Sean just read it too. But I read it first right around then. It was about 10 years ago. A lot of these books I can remember reading on the planes, flying back and forth to speak at conferences. And he talks about your zone of excellence and your zone of genius. And so your zone of excellence is what you're really good at. And for me, that was always photography, certainly. And you probably get paid really well to do it. Your zone of genius, though, stretches you. It makes you a little uncomfortable. A lot of times you feel some imposter syndrome around it. You feel a level of vulnerability because it's very close to your heart and it's who you really are. Your genius zone is like the core of who you are and how you're meant to show up in the world. And for a lot of people, that is heavily armored. There's a big wall around that, around accessing that or stepping into that. It's like stepping into your greatness. There's that quote by Marianne Williamson, your deepest fear isn't that you're inadequate. Your deepest fear is that you're powerful beyond measure. So this is actually really when you're about to step into like your force, your power, the way that you're here to serve and impact the world, that you start to feel all those fears bubbling up, that because it's stretching you out of your comfort zone. There's another quote that's like, success is found just outside your comfort zone, whatever. Okay, they're all, lots of quotes all say the same thing, and that is you have to stretch and get a little uncomfortable for you to really reach your greatness or whatever your next level is for yourself. So this is why I'm so passionate about coaching women through these fears, because we all have them. It's universal. It's part of the human experience. They come up and they can feel terrifying and crippling. And what happens is when we think we're unsafe, when we feel discomfort like that, we go into trauma response a lot of times. So fight or flight or freeze. And so if you're afraid of getting up and doing the podcast episode and you go into freeze, it's like, I'm just going to scroll on social media all day. I'm not going to sit down and record. Or it could be around a creative project that you want to launch, or it could be around a blog post that you need to hit publish on. You probably already wrote it. You're just afraid to publish it, right? It could be about making a reel or going live on your stories. We get that freeze response. That's our fear triggering a physical response within our body. And there's a way to move through that, where there's a way to recognize that and move through that. And that is like what's so powerful about the coaching and the healing work that I do. I love helping people through it and to like step into what their next level is, what their greatness is, right? So the turning point in my business was when I began to do some of the work to heal myself, to heal my own limitations, to heal my limiting beliefs, and to begin to step into my own genius. For me, that was when I began bringing my fine art into my photography business. So I started hand painting backgrounds, and actually it's funny, this was born out of a challenge because at the time I had this was before all my paintings got stolen. This is when I just started my paintings. But at the time, it was whatever I was doing as a background, as a set design, whatever, was being copied and sold for a lot less around me, right? So we'll call it a knockoff. But basically that was happening a lot, and I was getting frustrated with it because I was like, I spend so much time coming up with these ideas, designing all of this, whatever, and then it's like somebody else has it on special for 50% less when I turn, the next week or whatever. So I was getting frustrated with that. And then I was like, well, what cannot be copied? Like, what can I bring to the table that is uniquely me as an artist? And for me, that was bringing my painting into my work. And so that's when I started hand painting backgrounds. And that really took off. That's when I started my background company and started selling reproductions of my backgrounds, first through other companies and then took that over myself. Now you can get my background designs through Intuition Backgrounds. And so that was really like a new highlight, a peak of my career and my recognition within the industry. And the more I was like uniquely myself as an artist and brought all my talent to the table, brought all my vision, my inspiration to the table, and threw myself into my work that way, the more I was getting asked to speak places, the more people wanted to learn from me online, the more my online products were selling. That set off like a period of great years in business. And there were a few online courses that I still have today. You can still coach with me around today. That is Photographer Rising, which is the build and scale a 6 to 7 figure photography business with multiple income streams. And then Artist Rising, which is really the whole set design, creation, background painting, like the art side of what I was doing in my studio at the time. So those programs are still alive and well, and I have lots of great photographers in there that I love working with. But I was ready to stretch too. So we grew our business to, I can remember one year setting the intention. I was at a NAPCP conference and we were goal setting for the year. In my friend Alice Park, who runs NAPCP, she's amazing. She's always creates these beautiful planners and loves planning. And we were doing this planner, and I just wrote in there a revenue goal of like, I want to do 7 figures in sales at the studio, and I just wrote down $1 million, and like that was it. And then I just kind of like launched that up into the universe and just let it go. Well, it turns out we hit that goal that year, and it was through multiple revenue streams. So there was the portrait photography business, which was about 60% of that. There was online courses, workshops, and backgrounds and digital backgrounds. That was the majority. I was doing like in-person classes and stuff too. We hit the financial goal. We got to that goal though, and I had this sinking feeling inside. Like, oh God, now I have to do that all again. Because it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work to get there. And it was exhausting. And I feel like I died a little inside when we hit that goal, because I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to have to, I don't want this to be my lifestyle. If hitting the goal means that this is my lifestyle, I don't want to hit the goal. I've got to take this opportunity to tell you about the She's Gone Free membership community. It's a private mastermind for women who are ready to transform their blocks, where they're stuck, into breakthroughs and unlock their passion to create a more beautiful world. It incorporates my signature path of transformation that I coach women through in my online coaching course, Unbound, with an incredible community of inspiring women for support and accountability every month. We have monthly coaching calls, meditations, book club, paint nights, creative activities, all designed to help you tap into your flow state and unleash your most inspired and productive self. Every single month, we dive deep on a personal development topic with lessons, journal prompts, coaching calls, a business mastermind call, which is really great. This is where we brainstorm, problem solve. We launch creative projects. We talk about running online businesses and social media and all that good stuff. And it's just an awesome group of really creative, brilliant women who get together and problem solve for each other. And then we have mindfulness activities for kids and adults. This is one of my favorite things that we've developed over running this membership. These are things that you can bring home and practice with your family. There's also guided meditations for kids and adults, affirmations, and so much more. Because you're a listener of this podcast, you can go to HeidiHope.com/she'sgonefree, learn more about the monthly membership, and you can use the code podcast to save 50% off the monthly rate, meaning you get all of that stuff for less than $50 per month. You can cancel anytime, so just join us for a month and see if it's a good fit for you. This is the only way I offer business coaching now because the mindset piece is so important, and I know this is exactly what I needed back when I was really struggling in my business. It wasn't just business systems. That's great. You can certainly always find those from me as well with my online courses. This is really about digging deep and getting to the heart of what makes somebody successful in their career, in their relationships, in their life, because we are not just all business. We are mind, body, spirit. We have physical, emotional, spiritual health. They're all so important to live an overall happy, satisfied, and fulfilling life. So if this sounds like something you would love, we would love to have you in there. If you have any questions, you can find me on social media, DM me, or email Heidi@HeidiHope.com. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, but I would love to see you in our community. So again, go to HeidiHope.com/she'sgonefree. When you sign up, just use the code podcast and you will join under our founders rate, which is 50% off of the regular monthly payment. For under $50 a month, you can join us in this coaching community. I hope to see you on the inside. So as luck would have it, although I don't think there are no mistakes, there's no luck. Everything is like divine design. But that year, so we had hit the goal the year before, and we had a lot saved and invested, and we had a lot of online business. And our landlord came to us and wanted to raise the rent at the studio that we were at. And Sean was like, no way, it's not worth that. Like, we live in the city. We know what it costs to run this place. Like, we're not paying that for rent. Let's think about investing in commercial real estate. So then we went on a property hunt. We started looking at farms. I really wanted to buy a farm. I feel like that's every photographer's dream. I wanted land. I wanted to be able to build my big set designs. I had a great vision for all of this, but unfortunately, that property was not to be found in the state of Rhode Island. So we looked for months and months. And then finally, Sean said, if we don't buy this $1 million farm that doesn't exist, we can just take some time off. And I was like, yes, like that. I need time off. Like we grew, we scaled, we hit the peak. I knew I couldn't scale it past that point. Like that for the portrait studio, for me, for what we were doing, it was like that was the height of what I felt we were going to accomplish in the photography industry. And my soul craved the time off. Like I needed it. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. So we took that summer off. It was amazing. We had beach houses in Maine. We spent so much time with the kids. And then we were just running our online stuff. I mean, I feel like we were then, at that point, we just started like throwing spaghetti against a wall to see what would stick. I was still doing my coaching. I had a design partnership, which I loved doing. That was where I was creating different background marketing campaigns around different set design and backgrounds. And the whole time, we still have our eye on commercial property and just like, keeping an eye on the market, looking at spaces. Nothing really came up that seemed like a good fit until we found our commercial space, which was, it's so funny because it had been sitting on the market for like 6 months before. And I was like, it looked so ugly on the outside. I was like, I never even wanted to go see it. And then after seeing so many different places, I was like, well, let's just go check that out. And it used to be like a car repair place. So it just had these like giant ceilings and a big garage bay in the back. And it was a gut job, but it was priced accordingly. And so we walked in and I was like, yeah, like I think this is it. And our realtor was like, are you sure? And I feel like Sean looked like a deer in headlights because he was like, oh my gosh, it's so much work. Well, we renovated that property. We created New England Photo Collective, and the whole concept behind that business was having my own personal studio and art studio and a place where I could still photograph my clients because I was traveling. I was doing a lot either at the beach or in clients' homes for newborn photography still. So it was a place where I could still photograph my longtime clients who were still coming to me, but also we could then rent out the space. We could rent out the sets. We could have all my hand-painted backgrounds and run more of a collective space and an event space. The week we were set to open, that business was March of 2020. So it was literally the week that the whole world shut down for COVID. So not a great start to that business, but just still trying to like trust in the flow of life and the way things were working out for us. And luckily, I still had a lot of online stuff. I was an affiliate for Marie Forleo's B School that spring, so that ended up at least being some cash flow. But we had invested a lot into this property and opening this new business. And I had, my books were full of sessions, and it was like a complete shutdown and nothing, like we had no backup. So it was just kind of like, a topsy-turvy time to just like pray for the best and rely on our savings and all that. We were able to partially open our concept that summer and partially in the fall. But like New England didn't fully reopen for a good 2 years. I do look back and I'm thankful at least we had that space. So we were able to get out of our house. We were able to bring the kids there. I was still able to create and be creative in the space. So it served its purpose for us. But we began thinking, we were actually traveled down to Florida in the fall, March of 2021. Yeah. Our kids were still distance learning most of the time. Yeah, actually, they were full-time distance learning still. So we were like, let's just go to Florida and let them distance learn from Florida because we had family down here. So we went to see family. They did the whole distance learning, and we were just like, we got here and we're like, with everything being online and what was going on with real estate at the time, we're like, we could just sell the building and move anywhere. So like, do we really want to live where we're living and work where we're working for the rest of our lives? And the answer was like, no, we want to make this change. And we talked with the kids, and Juliana was starting high school the following year. And she said, if we're going to do this move, I'd like to do it before I go to start high school so that I can like start and stay in the same high school. So that also put a little bit of a time crunch on what we were doing. Now this is March of 2021. And it was another full year before we actually moved. But we started just looking at different areas of Florida. We were looking at neighborhoods. We were looking at school systems. We got put in touch with a realtor here. And we flew down the following February, and we ended up flying down with the kids on their February vacation, and we started looking in person at neighborhoods and things. And we felt at home right away. So we came back that spring. We decided to do it. We put our building on the market. We put our house on the market. We had basically a 6-week window for our kids to finish school in Rhode Island. We had 6 weeks to get down here, to find a house, buy a house, sell our house, and move down here before they started in August. It's because school starts a lot earlier down here than it did back up north. So we did it. It was wild. It was a lot. It was a lot of work. We like sold almost everything. Like we fit everything into one big moving truck. Sean and I actually, our kids were in our nanny's wedding. So Sean and I flew down here and moved everything in without the kids, and then flew back, did the wedding and everything, and then flew with the kids back here to like move in July of 2022. So we love it here. Like, I love the weather. It actually just rained the last 2 days, and it hasn't been raining at all. And I was like, felt so like low energy. And I was like, I forgot how much the weather can affect your mood because it's just always so beautiful here. It's really paradise. It's like, I love that it's warm all the time. I love doing yoga out on my patio. I do my morning routine outside. I'm never cold. I'm almost never cold. Our neighborhood has this beautiful boardwalk. I do my walking meditations. I go out on the boardwalk. It's like, you see the Intracoastal. It's like a paradise of all different birds. I've become this like old bird lady. I'm really into different birds and what bird watching, I guess. I feel like I needed that season of change and transformation and like taking care of self. And now I feel so ready for the next phase of my business. Like I'm ready to up level because I've given myself this period of rest and change and self-care. And I've honored that and not tried to like rush through it. So the old me, a very anxious, push, hustle, like whatever, felt anxiety in slowness, felt anxiety in rest. I joke all the time that like I used to take yoga class, and the last pose they have you do is Shavasana, which is when you just lay down. And I used to feel like I was crawling out of my skin laying down in Shavasana because I was like, this is doing nothing. It's not burning any calories, and it's not doing it. Like, I have so much work to do and I don't have time for this. And, there was just this level of unrest that kept me going at such a fast pace. And I think a lot of people are terrified to slow down, terrified to sit with themselves, terrified to look within, because they feel that anxiety, that constant rush energy. And so this season has been sitting in it, like sitting in the slowness, sitting in the rest, receiving it, enjoying it, like allowing it, right? And by doing that, I really healed my nervous system by doing that. And now I'm able to dig into my work and get excited about my work. And it's coming from this energy source within me. I'll call it inspiration. Inspiration is a very high vibrational energy. It's very much like needs to be extended out into the world. And that's really, as artists or creatives or business owners, like that's the energy we need to be creating out of. If you're launching a product or creating a business or doing anything, up-leveling, trying to make an impact in the world, it's so important to tap into that and let that be the energy that you put things out in the world. Because I did a lot of work and I achieved a lot of things back, but it was coming from a different energy. It was coming from lack. It was coming from scarcity. It was this unending drive. It was the inability to sit still. And when you work from that place constantly, you don't allow yourself to rest and you don't care for yourself and your nervous system, you get burnt out. And burnout leads to resentment. And then you begin resenting the work. You begin resenting the very thing that used to make you feel inspired. And when you're disconnected from the things that make you inspired, that's when you feel depressed. That's when you feel anxious. So a big part of the journey, I think, and if you're in business or you're an artist or you're just listening to this because you're like, who the heck is Heidi? And here's my story. But whatever the reason you came to this podcast today, know that this is the message that you need to hear. That anytime we want to create anything on earth, and we're all here to create something. You are here to create something, to create, and it needs to be connected to that inspiration within you. And if you're creating from any other place, it's a very weak energy to create out of. It's a very low energy. It makes things hard. It makes you feel like you have to suffer and sacrifice, like when you're not connected to that inspiration within. When you're creating from that place of inspiration, you're lit up. That energy source is unlimited. It truly is. But to get to tap into the energy source, you have to have periods of rest and quiet and reflection. And so that's why in my coaching, having a daily practice that connects you to that inspiration is really important. So we do, I do a paint lesson every month. The paint lesson isn't to make you a good painter, although maybe you'll become a good painter. The paint lesson is to connect you to that inspiration within. It's to connect you to flow state. It's to be playful and fun. Like, we're meant to smile. We're meant to have fun. We're meant to feel joy. So what we do is we purposefully practice feeling joy. We purposefully practice gratitude, love, appreciating the beauty of life so that it becomes habit, so that feeling good becomes a habit. We are conditioned to to feel bad all the time by everything around us. We're conditioned to believe that feeling good comes from outside of ourselves, that feeling joy comes from circumstance in life. It comes from money, or it comes from shopping, or it comes from a drug, or it comes from relationships, or, we're conditioned to think something outside of ourselves is what creates joy within ourselves, but that's not true. The source is within you, and it's learning how to tap into it and practice it so that your body gets used to, biologically, our body gets addicted to the chemicals that are its homeostasis. It wants to stay however it is. It doesn't like change, right? So the practice that we do in my coaching work is really like learning how to make a habit out of feeling good, feeling all the good feelings, and then beginning to put work out in the world, whether it's through our careers or through our hobbies or whatever, learning to put work out in the world from the energy of feeling good instead of from the energy of hustle, suffer, sacrifice, all that. That's old. That is like the old mindset, the old way of thinking, old paradigm, and it's crumbling. It's falling away, and we're seeing it in the old systems falling away. Yeah, I think that's like a big part of what I'm here to do is help people release that old paradigm and step into a new place, an empowered, embodied, inspired, passionate place of creativity, of creating things in the world, of impacting the world. You all have it within you. Every single one of you has it within you. If you want to join a community of women who are all doing this work, that's the She's Gone Free community. I love it. It's my monthly coaching membership. So we have monthly coaching calls and lessons and paint night and book club and all these things in which we are really just practicing showing up in the world from that powerful, aligned, joyful place. It's possible. It transforms everything. It changes you as a parent. It's amazing what it does for your kids because it rubs off on your kids, it rubs off on your husband, it rubs off on your spouse, whatever. Like it begins to transform all of your relationships. It definitely transforms your career. It aligns you with abundance. Making money becomes easier. Expressing yourself, showing up in the world becomes easier as we let those old heavy layers go. That's what it is. It's like an unlayering. We just let those old heavy layers go and we step into who we're designed to be, what we're really here to do on this planet. So I'd love to see you in the group if that sounds like something that would be a fun fit for you. Go to HeidiHope.com/She's Gone Free and you can join us anytime. Would love to see you in there. Well, thanks for hearing my whole journey on today's podcast episode. This is a long one. Usually they're a lot shorter than this. But yeah, that's my origin story. What's next for me? I don't know, but I have a feeling in my heart that it is a continuation of this work. And I really am passionate about bringing this to teens and tweens as well, to teaching the next generation how to tap into this for themselves, that it is within themselves. It is not out there in the world, that joy, love, gratitude, passion, purpose, like they're all available to you now, and they are all right in your heart. And you just have to learn how to practice, build the habit of tapping into those things, and then designing a life you love out of that place. If you liked today's episode, subscribe to the channel and share it to inspire somebody else today. You can rate and review the podcast so it reaches more ears. And of course, I always love your comments. Follow me on your favorite social media platform at Heidi Hope, Photographer Rising, and She's Gone Free, or visit HeidiHope.com to get on my insider list and hear about upcoming coaching and online learning opportunities. Thanks for listening. I'm so grateful for you.